for that kid who was an average kid, failing and not getting to go to the university, to now here I am getting all this amazing stuff. Felt like, this is just amazing and I love it. And 1.5 years into that job, Shrikant, I realized I have been running and winning this race, but I've never stopped to ask myself, is this even the race that I wanted to run? When people say that, hey, you know what? You have this weird accent, then I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm okay with that, right? So then you can accept yourself. And also you can accept other people, because the fundamental understanding here is every single person has a flaw.
Hey listeners, thank you for returning back to your favorite podcast, your platform for creating ripples of inspiration. It's a momentous milestone in the Inspire Someone Today journey. This is our 50th episode, and I couldn't have asked for a better milestone gift than to have a guest seated in front of me. The man who started the podcasting revolution in India and my guru for my own podcasting journey. Thrilled and grateful to have India's first podcast coach and consultant, Bijay Goutaum. Bijay, welcome to Inspire Someone Today.
Thank you, Shrikant, and it's such a pleasure to be on your show. And congratulations on 50th episode, because for the people who listen to this podcast, and if there is any of you who create podcasts, people know the amount of time, effort, and energy and dedication that this craft requires. And doing 50 episodes without missing a single episode takes great deal of effort and commitment. So kudos to you on that, and congratulations on hitting that 50. I'm so excited to be on your show.
Thank you, Bijay. It's a big coincidence, but it is a coincidence that your podcast is the Inspiring Talk and my podcast is the Inspire Someone Today. So there is inspiration all around between both of our podcasts.
Absolutely.
So with that, Bijay, I will starting with your backstory. From very humble beginnings to India's best podcaster. Relive the memories and the success principles that has helped you in this journey so far, Bijay.
Again, as you said, I come from a very, very, humble background. My parents worked really hard to make the ends meet. And I won't say that, we were in the place where we didn't have the food and stuff like that. We just had just enough, right? There was nothing for us as such when it comes to luxury. If I wanted, some shiny toy, then, I knew that I'm never going to get that, because we were just sailing through. And for my parents, the biggest achievement was that they were able to send me and my sister to the school. And I'm very grateful for that, because they migrated from our village to a town so that we can go to a school, a better school, and, get educated there. That's pretty much been my childhood, where it's just a regular, normal childhood. And when I look back, it feels that, some of those formative years, because I saw my father working really, really hard. I remember this one instance where I was putting my head on my mom's lap and we were just having conversation. And I told my mom, you know what, Mom, when I grow up, I am going to start my own company and I'm never going to work for anyone. And she would just laugh and say that, what are you even saying? Do you know that for you to start a company, for you to do your thing on your own, you need money? And that's something that we don't have. But, even though my mom said that, but for somehow I was convinced that, this is possible for me and this is something that I'm going to make it happen when I grow up. And that's also because I have seen my dad work for someone and work really, really hard and obviously not getting paid enough. And that's when I said that, hey, you know what? I'm never going to work for anyone. I'm going to work for myself. That's one of those, incident that sort of, stands out when I look back on how probably that belief in myself when I was growing up sort of helped. That's one, which is having that belief on me, even though people around me said that, hey, we're not very sure if that is going to be possible for you. And that's the same thing that I kept, hearing throughout my life. Like, hey, we don't have money and, I don't think you can ever start a business or anything when you grow up. So that's one. The second thing, what really helped me in building that confidence is, as a kid, I was this active kid who would go out and participate in school event. I would go out and participate in debate competitions. I would participate in speech competitions, and I have won awards for my school. And I was a head boy at my school. Every single function of the school, I would host it. I was up there, out there, being visible in front of people. And when I was doing that, I sort of became this popular kid in my school. And when you are a popular kid, what happens is a lot of people come to you and say, "Oh my God, you are amazing, you are amazing." And that I think, when I look back today, at that point of time, obviously I had no clue. But when I look back today, I think, when people came back to me and said that, "Hey, you know what, you are amazing. We love seeing you on the stage. I wish that, I could go on a stage and speak like you." That in a way also helped me gain the confidence that I'm special. So I think, that is very, very important for any kid to get that belief and validation from outside that you are special. Get that validation that, it is possible for you to do whatever you want to do, right? So these are the few things that, in a way, shaped my own belief system, saying that, hey, you know what? I'm popular here. I need to be visible in front of people. I need to do something different. And that is something that I even follow today. Like, hey, I need to do something different. I need to do something different that's going to help me stand out from everyone else. Now, I passed my grade 10th, 12th, and after that, I was preparing for my college. And I come from Nepal, and I was preparing for, my bachelor's in biotechnology, because at that point of time, biotech was very hot. I was, wanting to go to the Kathmandu University, which is one of the finest universities in Nepal. And I was preparing for the entrance. I did that and I sat on the exam, but I couldn't clear it. So I couldn't make it to the university to study bachelor's. And that had a huge impact on me. At that moment, before that, I have never faced any academic challenge. I always passed. I've been an average student, but I've never failed. And this failure sort of hit me hard, where I'm like, I have never failed, and academically not passing an exam has never been the reason for me to not get to the next step. And that sort of hurt me. And at that moment, I remember telling myself, I was at a cafe, looking computer cafe, right? So, and I was looking at that result and I couldn't see my name. And at that moment, instantly, I remember telling myself that, you know what? Even if I'm not able to make it to the best university, I'm going to be best wherever I go. And that is another core thing that remains with me even till today. After that, I came to Delhi for my bachelor's, and then I was an average student. All I had was 68% in my 11th and 12th combined, and there were classmates who had 90%, 95%, 80% in 11th and 12th. Yet I, was topper in the first year of my college. Second year of my college, I was awarded as the best student of the pharmacy, because I had those traits of taking initiative, starting new stuff. And at the same time, now I'm also a topper. So that's sort of like, here's this kid who is really good in, studies, as well as he takes all these different initiatives, and they awarded me as the best student. Third year, they awarded me with the full fee waiver scholarship. And final year, I was handed a job at the top pharmaceutical company as a research scientist. And throughout this time, that one moment where I felt that, I'm going to be best wherever I go, that hunger remained. And then I joined the pharma company. And before I joined, they took us to their training academy for 3 months of training. And they have picked these smart kids from across the country. And I think there were 40 of them who joined along with me. And we were sent on a 3 months training. And on that training, again, I topped that training batch on the tests and exams that they did. And the academy dean awarded me, saying and gave me the dean's award for that. And I came back to the system, inducted into the system. First year at my job, I got promoted. All of this looked amazing. I think, for that kid who was an average kid, failing and not getting to go to the university, to now here I am getting all this amazing stuff. Felt like, this is just amazing and I love it. And 1.5 years into that job, Srikant, I realized I have been running and winning this race, but I've never stopped to ask myself, is this even the race that I wanted to run? Like, I'm winning this, but I've never asked myself, is this the race that I'm meant to run? And I was getting more and more frustrated with that job because it was not in sync with what I should be doing. And that's when I started asking myself, hey, if this is not what you want to do, then what is it that you want to do? And the answer that came from within was, I don't know, because I had no clue of what I should do next. And that's when in 2017, I started getting in conversation with people, saying that maybe in those conversations, I will learn something and find that blueprint, which I can probably use in my own journey. And started doing the podcast Inspiring Talk. And when I did that podcast, within 15 months of doing that podcast, I quit my job to do podcasting full time and help other people by teaching them podcast. Another 1.5 year, we started WYN Studio, where we now work with brands and help them create their podcast. So I think these are the couple of things. Like, one is having that belief in myself, and second is going out there and constantly not being afraid to fail, whether that's putting myself out there on stage and in front of the school, and and then not being afraid to do that, or even recording that first episode while I have this broken accent, while I had all these challenges in front of me, but yet deciding to put myself out there without having the fear of what people might say. I think that's the another trait probably that has helped me. And this is, one of the things that I always do, which is I put the half-baked cake out there, get feedback, improve on it, rather than overthinking and saying that I'm gonna put the perfect product or service or a podcast or whatever that is, right? So I think that has worked really well for me. And one last thing I would say is just focusing on one thing, right? And just picking one thing and just focusing on it without getting distracted with anything that sort of gets your attention. And because with the social media today, it's easy to get distracted and veer off the track and then try different things. But I would say, take enough time in figuring out what that one thing is for you, and then give at least a year or two before you say that this is not working. So, those are the, few quick lessons I think I have learned through this journey.
Wow. That is what I would say listening to all of this, Bijay, is this is like the ABC of Bijay. If you want to get attention, have the belief, have the confidence. And that is what you have proved along your way. So wonderful start. This is like playing in the front foot and you're kind of things out of the park. Wonderful. And one thing I kind of, and you kind of shared that during opening remarks, is your self belief and the confidence, wanting to kind of make that kind of a difference is very much I have seen in very close quarters. And one other trait of yours, Vijay, that has seen in very close quarters, apart from the self belief and confidence, is also your vulnerability. You don't shy away from highlighting what is not working out. I think one piece that I encourage all of my listeners to go back and listen in Vijay's The Inspiring Talk is a beautiful podcast where he has captured I am made of flaws. I think that was fantastic. Just to go out there, tell to people that we are all human, we all have our limitations. Tell us a bit more about it, Vijay. What makes you feel at ease with your vulnerabilities and your message that you want to kind of share to the people, talking about the flaws that each one of us have?
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, right? Like everyone else, I was trying to hide my flaws and trying to say that, hey, you know what, everything is all right. I'm all right. I'm all good, and showcase that out in the world. And that's what we do, because this is the world of Instagram, where we need to put our best put forward, where people have the immense pressure to look good, to show to the world that we all have the perfect lives, to show people that we are perfect people. But what I have realized in interviewing now more than 125 people, that what, every single person that I have had interviewed on my podcast had some sense of insecurity, even if that's a billionaire, even if that's a person who has written several best-selling books, or even that's a person who is a very celebrated creator or comedian or whatever that person is. And what gave me courage to go out and start sharing my own story is when I was getting in conversation with some of these people. And there were some conversations where I sat across with some of these guests and they shared it all. They bared it all. And at that moment, I was not judging them at all. And what I was feeling on my head is I was able to relate with them and I was empathizing with them. And then I realized the reason that we are not willing to put our flaws out there, not willing to share that, hey, you know what, these are the things that I'm trying to work on, is because we fear the judgment. And the reason that we don't share anything with the world that, hey, you know what, these are the things that I'm struggling with is because people think that, I'm going to be judged. What is it that these people are going to think about me? But that's not how it works. If you really think about this, when you saw somebody last time mentioning on social media saying that, hey, this is what it's not working. Hey, here are the mistakes that I made as an entrepreneur. Hey, here are the mistakes that I made as a leader. Hey, here are the things that I really effed up. You didn't judge that person, but you felt that, I empathize with you. I can understand you. I'm there with you, right? You empathize with them. Now, and the same happens when you share your stories. Number one, it people are not going to judge you, they are going to empathize with you. Number two, it also encourages a lot of other people to talk about their own vulnerabilities and their own flaws, and which is the real world, right? So the world that we see on Instagram or that we try to portray on social media is not the real life, right? We are not always happy. We do have those sad moments, bad moments, and we are down, but we don't show that. So that will encourage a lot of people to share their own vulnerabilities. And when more people share their vulnerabilities, then we'll see people, empathizing with that and relating with that story. And also the third thing is that, hey, you know what? This person also has the same kind of flaws that I have and same kind of insecurities that we have. I'm not alone in this journey. If everyone puts their best version out there and say that, I'm perfect, then, we are going to feel really bad that, oh my God, this person is really perfect. But having this fundamental understanding that every single person out there, no matter who that person is, whether that's Shah Rukh Khan, whoever that person is, all of them do have the insecurities that we are not willing to put it out there, right? So having this fundamental understanding that not everyone is perfect and I'm not perfect either. So I don't have to pretend to be perfect. And again, it's not that I started sharing all my flaws at once. It's like a muscle that you need to push it and you need to be comfortable sharing it. And one of the best piece of advice on vulnerability that I recently heard was only share the stories that you are comfortable sharing. Because if you share something that you are not, the issues or the things that you are yet to resolve, things that you yourself need to accept and process, if you do that, then that can trigger you yourself, right? So first, accept the story. Feel that, it's okay. It's okay to have the flaws that you have. And once you have made peace with that, then go and share it out there with the world so that other people can benefit from you sharing your story. And every single time when I have shared the story, I try to push that envelope a little bit, right? So I share a bit of a story and then see how people react. And they just, all they have is an empathy saying that, hey, you know what, I can completely relate to this. I have, been through the same situation as well. Thank you for sharing that. And that encourages me to do more. And then I go and share more. And then, they empathize with it and I go and share more. And I intend to do that till the time where I'm 100% completely transparent of who I am. And what that does is that releases the pressure on me to try and be someone else on internet and be someone else in real life. Because I don't want to put the face on the internet saying that, this is me. And if that's not true in real life, that doesn't make sense. So that's how I think about vulnerability, and I think it's a power that you have, because when you are open and vulnerable, then you are not insecure, and when you are not insecure, doesn't matter what other people say about you. When people say that, hey, you know what, you have this weird accent, then I'm like, yeah, I know, and I'm okay with that, right? So then you can accept yourself, and also you can accept other people, because the fundamental understanding here is every single person has a flaw. And when you have that fundamental understanding that we all are flawed human beings, Some of us are emotionally flawed. Some of us are physically flawed. Some of us are spiritually flawed. Some of us are flawed in our relationship, right? There is some sort of flaw that we have. And when you have the fundamental understanding that we all are flawed human beings, then you are not judging other people. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I think about when it comes to vulnerability and sharing your flaws out there.
No, so very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for kind of creating that awareness, because all of us have flaws. You said it is the power that you get. I say it is even more powerful because it makes you to stay at peace. When you know that if you are a human, you have emotions. If you have emotions, you also have the good and bad to it. I think very well put. I hope this is a lesson in itself for each one of us to accept what the flaws are, make peace with it, and do not have facets about a digital version of yourself and the off digital version of yours. Fantastic. I think let's move on to one of the subject that's very close to our heart, which is podcasting. Let's slip into it. Like I said at the beginning, you're one of the first and foremost podcasting coach in India. Has a fantastic run, 125 plus episodes that you have on the Inspiring Talk. Tell us a bit more about Bijay sitting where you're sitting. What are the key trends that is shaping up the podcasting industry? What do you see the scene happening in India and the reflections of the top podcaster yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there are certain trends, there are a bunch of trends that people, can sort of look at in India. In 2017, when I started my podcast, right, Shrikant, and if you said that, hey, you know what, in, few years time, you will see that all these Bollywood celebrities or, stand-up comedians or all these content creators on YouTube are going to be jumping into podcasting, then I wouldn't have believed, because there were only few people who were podcasting, and the medium was very, very, and I could literally count the number of people who were doing podcasts back in 2017, right? So from there to where we are today, I was looking at the report, and we are almost at 100 million podcast listeners in the country today, and which is massive growth. There were just 40 million listeners in 2018 to now in 2021. We are almost at 100 million, and that number is going to go to 200 million next year. So which is insane, which is massive growth. And few things in the trends, from the trends perspective, and why is it so that it's, this medium is growing so much, is because one is obviously the big investor money is flowing into the medium, right? So whether that's Spotify putting a lot of money to promote podcasts as a medium. Now, if you go on any of the podcast listening apps today, whether that's Spotify, Jio Saavn, Gaana, or Wink, go on any platforms, you will see podcast section very prominently being placed on the apps. And the reason is that these apps have realized that if you want to distinct yourself, if you want to differentiate yourself from the other music listening app, is the audio content, which is a podcast, and it's going to only get better from here. Now, also we have seen like huge marketing budgets being pushed, is being pumped into the ecosystem to promote podcast as a medium. That's the other thing. And the third thing is we have seen a lot of traditional media houses are jumping into podcasting, right? So whether those are newspaper publications or traditional television or the radio stations, now they have a podcast only content, which means they are pushing it out there, because podcast as a medium is such a beautiful medium, right? Where you can consume content on the go and it fits into your daily life perfectly. And that's where the podcast has the highest audience retention rate, right? So where people are listening to us already almost for 30 minutes now, you can't imagine somebody, sitting down and watching you for 30 minutes on Instagram or on social media or on any other medium for that matter. But it's possible in podcast, because people, when they find value in what they are listening, they are going to stick through and they are going to complete listening to it. And from the trend perspective, we are starting to see massive growth in the regional language space. We are now going to see the growth this year in regional languages like Tamil, on Telugu, Marathi, Bangla, Hindi, and so on and so forth, right? So now what's going to happen is, when a lot of regional language creators are going to adapt to this medium, it's going to explode big time. right? The people who are early movers, the people who are jumping into this medium and creating the content as an early mover in this different languages are going to dominate the space. And obviously, last but not least, but podcast is a medium which has got the lowest entry barrier because you don't need anything, right? You are on your room. I'm on my in my bedroom, and we can just do this, which is just amazing. And all you need is a microphone connected to your computer, and boom, you are ready to go. You don't need fancy camera or lighting equipment and all of that jazz, right? It's a simple medium to do that. So those are the few things, and this medium is only gonna get better and better, and it's gonna grow, and it's becoming mainstream, and which is such a great thing. And the way it is growing, the way brands are now investing in podcast and making it part of their brand strategy is very, very exciting for us. And we work with a lot of brands at WYN Studio, and this is very exciting to see. A lot of brands are way too excited to explore podcast as a medium and what this medium has to offer for brands. So yeah, this is very, very exciting time.
That's wonderful to hear, particularly the growth spurt that is bound to happen over the next couple of years. I'm sure the listeners listening to this would be interested to say, if the entry barrier is so less, if there is a growth spurt that is going to happen, I want to jump to the bandwagon. So for somebody like them, Gautam, if there is one or two things that you would want to say for inspiring aspiring podcasters, what do they need to do and what basic skills would they need to possess?
So I would say, because it is easy to create a podcast, because the entry barriers are low, because you can just download an app on your phone and record anything and put it out there on the internet, people are not just going to listen because you create it. There has to be a substance. It has to be thought through. And often I say people that there are three things that you need to keep in mind if you are somebody who's just starting out. The first one is you need to even have a clarity of why do you want to start a podcast, right? Now, for somebody like Srikanth to do 50 episodes without missing a single episode, it would have never been possible if there was a stronger why or a stronger purpose to this, right? Because you enjoy doing this and because you want to learn from a lot of people. If you don't have that stronger purpose, then you are going to stop by 7 or maybe 10 episodes. And we have seen that only 33%, by the way, Srikanth, go beyond 10th episode of their podcast. And this is not me saying this. There are data that says that only 33% of the podcasters go beyond 10 episodes. And if you ask in the past 90 days, how many of the total episodes actually published one episode in the past 3 months, the number will go somewhere between 20-25%. Now, that's the kind of consistency that we are seeing in this medium. And that's why it's important for you to have the clarity of your purpose on why do you want to do it. And for us to become successful in anything, we need to be consistent. And consistency comes from having the understanding of why. And if you understand why is it that you want to do it, because you want to share your knowledge, or is it because you want to build your personal brand, or is it because you want to build your network by interviewing people on your show, or is it because you are very passionate about doing a storytelling podcast and sharing your story with the world, then you need to have that clarity of why do I want to do podcast. And the other thing that you need to have clarity of is like, who is it for? Understanding your audience. What are the problem and pain point of your audience, and how your podcast can help you solve those problems, how your podcast can be the show which is going to bring the solutions to the audience on the topic of your podcast that they're struggling with. Third thing is what is going to be the key differentiator of your podcast, because there are so many people creating podcasts right now, but how you are going to stand out. What is that different or unique thing about your podcast? And why should people listen to your podcast as compared to a lot of other podcasts? These are the three key things that I would say you need to have clarity of even before you think of starting a podcast. If you do this, and if you have the clarity of these three things, I can tell you that you are already on top 20% of the people who are doing podcasts. Because, in my experience of interacting with so many podcasters and working with so many people, I know for a fact that a lot of people who are doing podcasts do not have clarity of either of those three things.
So we'll slip into the power of 3 round now. Bijay, 3 guests you would love to have on the Inspiring Talk.
Wow, there are so many of them. I always have the wish list with me for the kind of people that I want to bring as a guest on my podcast. And I'm just thinking which 3 to
We'll get a sneak preview of those three unique guests that you're always eyeing for.
Yeah. So there are a lot of them, right? So the first one in this list would be because now I'm doing a lot of, I'm looking at, just to give a bit of a context here. I know that this is like supposed to be just three things and you are done, but just to give you a bit of a context, my podcast always has been in a way that if there's something that I want to learn, I'll go and find the person who is best on that topic, right? So lately I'm myself exploring the world of spirituality. So I'm looking for guests from that world, right? If I'm trying to learn about meditation, I'll go and find who can be the best person to talk about meditation and so on and so forth. It's in a way, this podcast is the selfish reason of doing the podcast is I can learn from the masters in the name of interviewing them. So the first person I would sort of love to interview on my podcast is somebody from the spiritual world. That could be somebody like Sri Sri Ravi Shankar or somebody like, Radhanath Swami from the ISKCON. That's one. The second is I'm looking at learning from extremely, creative people and who create a lot of stuff and have an amazing creative brain and work in the different stuff, right? So in that sense, I would love to uncover the mind of people who are extremely creative and who do some of the amazing stuff. Like some of the people who can fit probably on that would be Anurag Kashyap, for instance, right? Or maybe actors like Nawazuddin Siddiqui, right? So those are the kind of creative people that I'm sort of looking at. And the third kind of people that I would look at, sort of getting in conversation with the people who are, who think completely out of the box when it comes to business. The people who sort of are able to see the vision and who are ahead of the curve, where everybody say that we just don't understand what this person is doing, but how their mind sort of works. And the people who can probably fit in that would be Kunal Saha. Nobody understood, like, what is this app Crade all about, right? All you do on that app is just make your payments of the credit card, but how is he gonna ever make money? People are now realizing that, oh damn, he was not just making that app to make the credit card payment, but he was creating the community of these top 2% or top 3% of the Indian audience who has got that level of, financial capabilities, elite club of people in the country. And nobody thought about that. And I think, it would be great to decode the mind and how they think about it. I had the opportunity to get some sense from billionaire Naveen Jain when I brought him on the podcast and try and decode how he think about future. So I think those would be, few quick picks here, but I know that I'm missing a lot.
Three things that is there on Bijay's bucket list.
So I love, adventure sports. I've done bungee jumping last year and I've done paragliding. The next thing that's on top of my list is skydiving. That's on, the top of my list. The second thing obviously is scuba diving. The skydiving and scuba diving is on the second bucket list. And third one is, I want to, sort of compile everything that I have learned from these 125 people into a book. So that's on my bucket list.
Wonderful. Three podcasts that has inspired you.
So I love listening to different podcasts across the genres. So from the inspiration perspective, I started listening to Tim Ferriss even before I started my podcast. And there's another podcast called The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. That was another podcast, that I listened a lot, and that the guests on the show has sort of helped me widen my knowledge. So that's the second one. And I also love Joe Rogan.
Got it. I thought you'll also mention inspire someone today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Three book recommendations, Bijay, that you have for all the listeners out here.
Book. The first one is Ikigai, and I love that book because the simplicity with which he explains the concept. And I also had the opportunity to interview. I have it right on my table. Had the opportunity to interview Hector Garcia, who is the author of this book Ikigai. So that's the first book. I love Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and that's another classic that I would highly recommend people to sort of check out. That's the second one. And the third book, which in fact, like, as you say, right? So the book that you encounter in your journey, and at that point of time, that becomes a favorite, right? So recently, as you might know, I'm exploring more about vulnerability So I'm loving a lot of work of Brené Brown, right? So
Mm.
she writes a lot about vulnerability. And I'm reading her book as I'm speaking with you. So Brené Brown, I love her work, and I love, I'm going through her books. So Daring Greatly is the book that I'm reading right now, and I'm loving it. And also, I love another book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Naval Ravikant is this modern philosopher who has got this very clear, to the point clarity about life, on freedom, on happiness. So I'm loving, the almanac of Naval Ravikant. Again, that's a compilation of his interviews and the tweets that he made. That's the third book that I'm reading, and I'm absolutely loving. So yeah, I mean, those are the few quick picks and the recommendations.
Yeah, great picks. I think between those podcasts and those books, there's a like a landmine of wonderful recommendations. So the last of the power of three question: three dream accessories you wished you had in your studio.
Three dream accessories for my studio. All right, now that's a good one. The first one would be, so Rod, the microphone company, and I'm still trying to justify the need of that product for myself. So there is this mixer come recording console that Rode, the microphone company, produces, called Rodecaster Pro, which looks amazing. And I'm sure, when we start the studio for WYN Studio, then that is the first equipment that we're going to get. So that's the first one. Rodecaster Pro is the first one on the list. The second one would be getting a camera. So now we are also looking at putting some stuff on YouTube and create some visual content. So that's the other thing, that's on my bucket list of the things that I sort of want. From the microphone perspective, I upgraded recently my mic, so pretty much sorted there. So I think those would be quick two that I can think of.
Wonderful, Vijay. Thanks so much for being a sport in this power of three round. So we'll move on. As we move on, one of the pieces I definitely want to get insights from you is the lessons and memories that you have encapsulated in the 125 plus episodes that you have done so far. It's great to hear that you are thinking about converting this into a book. Looking forward to that in the near future. As we speak, if we were to kind of reflect on that and tell me and my listeners, what has changed for you and what has impacted you by virtue of talking to these 125 plus guests?
Um, the first one is the humility. And this is the most important trait that I have picked from a lot of my guests. When I interviewed these people, I just showed up, and when we are having conversation, I would think like, hey, you know what, these are these amazing, highly successful people. And when I went on to have that conversation, the way they treated me, like at that point of time, they made me feel like I was the most important person on the planet. And that humility, to have that amount of groundedness, where you don't feel like I'm somebody who is, let's say, a billionaire and this guy is no one, versus saying that, hey, you know what, this person is really important, and treating all every single person with humility. I think that's the biggest trait that I have sort of picked up with. So that's one. The second trait that I would say that I picked from a lot of these people, and which helped me a lot in my own journey, is having a powerful network. And I love, one of the guests of my podcast said, if you want to connect dots, you need to first collect dots. What he means is, if you really want, a lot of people to be on your network where you can make the connection and figure that out, you need to have first build the relationship with that many people, so that only you can connect those dots. And you never know when those dots are going to get connected. Some of the people that I've interviewed way back in 2017 calls me up today saying that, hey, can we collaborate on this? And the only reason that connection is happening today is because I spent time for the past few years. I've been just collecting and collecting and collecting these dots. And then now you never know when these dots are going to be connected, right? So invest in relationships and try and build a genuine connection with someone. So whether you meet someone at an event or whether that you meet on internet, try and build a genuine connection and relationship with the people. And the way you do that is by being of service first, right? Serve them first before asking anything from them. So that is the other one. They are powerful networker where they have built this very powerful network with other people. That's the second one. And the third thing that sort of stands out is always thinking beyond yourself. And a lot of people that I've interviewed on my podcast, they are not doing it only for themselves. They have this bigger vision of serving humanity and trying to make a dent in some way possible, which can make the lives of other people easier or lives of other people better. So I think having the mindset to think beyond yourself and how you can serve other people, how you can be of service to the other people, whether that's by providing your knowledge or providing your time or providing, whatever that you can, just being of service to other people is the third one. And, those would be quick three picks that I would say, which has really, really helped me in my journey and helped me understand the whole thing. And also the fourth one I'll give, which I almost forgot, which is one of the very, very strong lessons that I have learned is there is no one success template. You can create your own template and you don't have to follow your uncle or your brother or your sister or your bhua, or you don't have to follow anyone's path or journey. You can craft your own journey. And we are living in the time where there is endless opportunity in whatever you want to do, whatever skill that you have, you can monetize, right? People are monetizing dancing, with hula hoop. Or there are people who are monetizing just the skill of skipping. Or there are people who are, monetizing their skating, or people who are monetizing painting. Like, this is the world where you can monetize any goddamn skill that you have, which even you think it's a useless skill, but there is a way that people, monetize it. It's just that you need to figure out how people can pay for that, right? So I think just don't get discouraged when somebody says that this is not going to work unless it's the person who have been on that journey. Don't take advice from the people who don't know your journey, who don't know about what you are doing, and just create that path for yourself. And it's absolutely possible for you to create your own definition of success and monetize whatever skill that you have.
Those are some priceless insights out there. Thank you so much for summarizing that particular piece. Along the way, did Bijay had any kind of a oh my god moments talking to your guests?
There's a lot. It almost happens, Shrikant, in every conversation, there's like a lot of aha moments where, oh my God, I haven't really thought about it. What a beautiful piece of advice that is, that happens on every single episode, right? There are so many of those. I can't even begin to share those. So, as I said, right, so some of the lessons that I've sort of shared with you, but also some of the things like where I have complete no idea of, right? Sometimes I get in a conversation with someone. And for example, like I was getting in conversation with someone who is an expert on having conversations. And, he shares something about, I said like, hey, how can you really lead the conversation and, really have a great conversations with people? And he said, the simple hack for getting in a conversation and really go deep into the conversation is by being interested, not by being interesting. And which is such a simple thing, but it's such a profound insight to share, because most of the time we want to show how cool we are, how amazing I am. But instead, if you direct that focus on someone else and say that, hey, I'm interested in listening to your story, tell me what's your story. And if you want to, you are willing to go deep, then that's going to completely, transform the way that you're going to connect with that person, right? And there are insights on, for example, freedom and wealth creation, right? A lot of people start saying that I want to make more money, but the fundamental where, the monetizes, making money or generating income starts by building the skills and having those fundamental understanding that you need to first build that skill before you can monetize it. If you want to make more money, then you need to have more skills which you can offer to people and which people are willing to pay for you. And oftentimes when people come to me and say that, hey, you know what, BJ, give me some ideas with which I can make money, then I turn around and tell them that it's like, hey, you know what? If you're thinking of making more money, think of what are the most in demand skills that you can exchange, which you can offer the service or a product in exchange of the money, right? It's as simple as that. But most of us don't understand the simple, and we are so swayed away by the idea of instant gratification where we all want success overnight. I think, having this understanding that only a grocery comes in 10 minutes, something worth celebrating for life, it sometimes can take decades, and it's very, very difficult for us to understand.
I think this has been a gem of a masterclass for all of our listeners. And this show is all about creating ripples of inspiration. So if there is inspire someone today message for all of our listeners, more so on this coveted 50th episode, what is Bijay Gautam's inspire someone today message to all the listeners?
I think one of the things that I've been thinking recently, and one of my team members called me up late in the evening, said that, BJ, can I have a word with you? And it was 10 in the night, and I picked up the call and I said, yeah, what is that? Tell me. And she goes on and said that, hey, you know what? I'm feeling a bit of out of place lately, and the reason that I'm feeling that way is because when I go online on internet, I see all these people doing this amazing stuff, and I feel that I'm not doing enough. I feel that I'm not taking as much action or playing full into my potential, and I feel insecure that even if I will ever be able to create anything massive or anything big in the world. And I turned around and told her that, what, I feel exact same every single day. That am I gonna be able to create a huge difference in this world? Am I gonna be able to do enough? And the reason that you even feel that there are so many people doing amazing things but I'm doing nothing is because you have an awareness, and you have somewhere the feeling that you are capable of doing something amazing. Otherwise, like, people are on with their life, they don't bother to stop and think that there are so many people doing a lot of stuff. Like, they will just get done with their life, they will just go with the flow, and they just don't bother on thinking that I could do more. And the only reason that you're feeling that I could do more is because somewhere you feel that you have a huge potential to make difference in the world. But at the same time, you are getting overwhelmed by seeing people doing amazing things but not understanding how much time, efforts, and energy these people have put in to have the successes that they have today, right? And we often end comparing that we are yet to start, or maybe you are just beginning. And when you see someone who has been in the game for 5-10 years doing the thing and getting the results, then you're going to feel overwhelmed. Just understand that it takes a while for you to be there. At the same time, the reason that you have that feeling is because you know that you have that potential. And the only way to get past that feeling is by taking action, by going out there and doing things, where you are constantly doing things, where you're constantly producing results, where you are constantly working on something that you love. So when you are creating more is when you feel more energized to do more. So I would say, don't sit down there thinking, and don't sit down there listening to these amazing people Srikanth bring on his podcast, saying that, oh my God, this guy has done this or this person has done that. Instead, start with that small action, because everything said and done, the only thing that's going to take you from A to B is taking that action. So the antidote to feeling that I'm not good enough is taking action. So start by taking action, no matter how good or bad that you are. But if you start taking action, the only way or the only direction that you are going to go is go up, get better. So I would say the inspire someone today message would be, don't overthink, but start taking action.
Don't overthink, start taking action. The journey of 1,000 miles started with that first step. On that note, Bijay, thank you so much for sharing this masterclass with me and my listeners. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what to listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.